the other thing you said to me earlier that which is amazing is that homeschooling is growing in the Black community. Was it 16%?
Over 16% of Black households are homeschooling now, more than any. That's the largest percentage than any other ethnic
that is
group.
incredible. Why?
Well, we homeschooled starting in the 90s. And we know that part of our reasoning had to do with, again, identity, right? We wanted our children, for example, this wasn't the only thing, to learn about their heritage from people who knew and were not going to try to manipulate.
You already knew back then that if they were taught history from a perspective of victimhood, they would not be set up to succeed in life. You already knew that back then.
My wife and I remember, she's a grade ahead of me, just a few months ahead of me. We went to the same we've known each other since we were 5 years old, so we literally went to the same elementary school and thing. And we both remember in history class, first, second grade or whatever, you have your book and then American history and you have George Washington and the other. And then this one chapter, boom, Black people not discussed at all. And the first picture I have is a slave ship. Right? So, okay, that's the first definition of me. So I didn't exist until you needed slaves, right? Again, are they attempting to do that? Is that the intention? Maybe not, right? But that, along with now, it's way worse now, right? But, okay, here's a picture of the civil rights movement, right? And then on. So I knew, who's Booker T. Washington? Frederick Douglass, right? Who are all these other people? You remember Harriet Tubman for the purpose of the Underground Railroad, right? But who are all these who was Carter Woodson? These things I learned as a young adult after school. I began to read, right? And I said, gee, in my 20s, I said, had I known this then, so what we said when we had kids, we're not sending them through that. Why would we have them learn some reversed engineered, let's kind of like get some of these other ideas out of your mind? And that was part of it. Some of it was spiritual as well, right? Like being Christians and wanting them to have a spiritual base and foundation, those types of things. So we talked about my wife, it was her idea. She's the pilot, I'm the co-pilot, right? So she said this idea. I said, yes, honey, I agree with you. And it was probably one of the best decisions that we ever made. So that was what was important to us. That's why I said in retrospect, I would look and I would see the ideologies pulling people away. Said,
do you think that's what's happening with families now? They don't want their kids learning CRT and whatever other stuff that's happening in these schools?
Contrary to what some people believe, although there's all this controversy about what critical race theory is, there are Black families who saw it and see it as victimization and said no.
Wow.
Now, part of the explosion had to do with the pandemic, right? 2020, schools are shut down, right? Slowly opened up and everything, and they online learning, those types of things, which it's only going to last for a little while. And only if you have the environment to be able to do that, right? Everybody can't just do it that way. So much of it happened with that. Parents began to take it into their own hands. There were parents who began to homeschool who thought they would never do it. But because the circumstances became so dire, they began to take it into their own hands. And one of the things that was powerful, Marissa, whether they homeschooled or whether they wound up finding something else for their child, they recognized that the ultimate responsibility for their child's education was not the state.
Right, it's the parents.
Parents, absolutely. So if my child can't read or my child is being fed disinformation, only part of that is because of the institution that's doing it. The other part of it is me allowing that to happen, right? So you have that. So these different reasons. And again, it's just, I didn't even know it was over 16% to the other, about a few months ago. I knew it was growing, right?
Yeah.
But I didn't know how much. It was another young lady who works for an organization called Free Black Thought, did an article. And then I saw it and she's actually part of our organization now too, part of our IPSI ambassadors. And I saw it and I read it and nope, she had all the numbers. As the young people say, all the receipts.
Wow.
More than any other ethnic group, right? And it's continued to explode. They said some 2 million students are no longer enrolled in the public school system over the last 2 years, right?
Yeah.
If that continues, and I say more power to them, right?
Exactly.
Yes, ma'am.